would you play a game if you weren't trying to? How could you call yourself Halo King when you're not? Yeah, you're right. It doesn't matter how the objective is for you to win the game. Like, why would you play a game if you weren't trying to win?
Growing up, I had no brothers or sisters. It's true. That meant that most of the time when I was at home, I was pretty much totally on my own. However, the upside of being on your lonesome is that you often got spoiled. Back when I was in education, it was the 360 versus PS3 generation of consoles. And let me tell you, that was a real console war. Half of the lads in my class had a 360, whereas the others had a PS3. However, me, being a spoiled loner, was one of the rare folks who had both. And that meant that I had the unique ability to see what both consoles had to offer. Now, with that being said, if I had to make a chart that showcased how much time I spent on each console, it would probably look like this. Yeah, really. And there's only one reason and one reason only why I spent so much time on the 360. And that was Halo. 2007's Halo 3 and 2010's Halo Reach pretty much summarise a lot of my youthful years in a nutshell. And Halo, as a brand, really is one of those things that you either get or you don't. If you get it, well, then you get it. But if you don't get it, then you're probably wondering what all the fuss is about. I mean, okay, it's a first-person shooter in space. What exactly is the big deal? And if you're asking that, then you definitely don't get it. Because look, you're right, technically, Halo is just one of many first-person shooter franchises out there. But it's more than that, because Halo took the traditional FPS formula and turned it on its head, by prioritising one thing that other FPS games didn't, and that's being social. Every weekday when the clock struck 4, me and my 360 buddies would all run home and load up Halo until around 12 midnight every single day. And when the weekend rolled around, we'd do the exact same thing, but all day long. And the reason for that, to put it simply, was that Halo games felt like a place whereby we could bond and progress together. We had our own clan with our own custom emblem and tag, and we go around kicking ass in matchmaking, creating fun games, crafting our own maps in Forge, or looking back on some sweet clips in theatre mode. Everything about these games screamed community, and no matter who you were, you felt like you belonged, and it was marvellous. But around 2011 or so, one after another, we all just naturally stopped playing. There was no specific reason, no controversial nerf or change, we just kind of stopped for some reason. Halo 4 would roll around in 2012, but none of us even bothered with it, which, looking back, was pretty strange, considering how much we adored what came before it. And by 2015, with the release of Halo 5, we had all long moved on, and hardly any of us even had an Xbox One. And the weird thing is, I know this story resonates with a lot of people out there. Halo, as a franchise, was an absolute juggernaut in the 2000s, but starting in the 2010s, really started to fall by the wayside. And almost everyone has a theory as to why. Some people say the reason is because the original creators of the franchise, Bungie, moved on. Bungie was acquired by Microsoft in the early 2000s, whereby they of course made Halo. However, they eventually got back their independence, leaving the Halo franchise in Microsoft's hands, whereby the artificially created 343 Industries took over to carry on the Halo name instead. Many say that 343 have continually failed to recapture the magic that Bungie created. And maybe, but honestly, I think a big reason why Halo lost its mojo is that a lot of us that grew up with it ended up migrating over permanently to PC, whereby Halo was nowhere to be seen and thus was just forgotten about as such. However, in 2019, Microsoft shocked the gaming world by bringing Halo back to the PC, after over a decade of absence, with a promise to even bring the upcoming game, Halo Infinite, to the platform too. And with this announcement, interest in Halo had once again reached levels that it hadn't seen in years. Now, Halo couldn't just be played by the much since dwindled Xbox population, but everyone with a Windows computer. Oh, and it's also included in Game Pass. Needless to say, all of this got many people's attention. Mine included. And so, here I am. After over a decade of absence from Halo, I am asking one very simple question. Is Halo Infinite the long-awaited revival of this once legendary series? Well, I have never been more conflicted with a game in my life, and let me try to explain why. With most games, they are usually either completely awful, like say World of Warcraft Warlords of Draenor, or they are totally awesome, like say Saints Row 1. But very rarely is a game 50% amazing and 50% dog shit. But when it comes to Halo Infinite, that's exactly what it is. 50% of Halo Infinite is just pure gold, just absolutely fantastico. But the other 50% is, to put it bluntly, criminal. And so this is going to make me look like I've got some sort of multiple personality disorder, because I'm going to spend half the time here praising it and practically begging you to try it, and the other half pissing on it and begging you to avoid it. Oh, it's like yin and yang, Venus and Mars, Reddit and bad smells. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. So without further ado, let's start off with what I like about the game, and that is the campaign. Ever since the first game, Halo campaigns have always been very unique. What separates the average Halo campaign from other FPSs is its emphasis on huge open levels, cinematic displays, and massive structures that make you feel like you're a gnome. The campaigns, despite on paper really being quite linear, feel, and I put an emphasis on feel, very free and open. Pretty much everyone gives the Halo campaign formula a thumbs up, and thus it would have been very easy for Free for Free to carry on such tried and tested mechanics in Halo Infinite 2. But they didn't. Instead, the developers said, what if we took the open world feeling that Halo campaigns have traditionally provided, but actually make the game open world? Wait, what? Innovation? In a AAA game? This is a world first. No, but seriously, whenever game developers change up a decade-long tried and tested formula in such a drastic fashion, it can either go one of two ways. Either, number one, very well and everyone claps at them for having the balls to mix it up a bit, or, the much more likely number two, everyone despises it and pisses their pants. And honestly, going into this, I was hesitant. I mean, an open-world Halo game? What do they think this is? Elder Scrolls? But I'm very pleased to report that damn, this was a good experience. The best way I can describe Halo Infinite's campaign is that it's the Breath of the Wild of the Halo series. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. Traditionally, Zelda games were a somewhat linear and controlled experience with a tried and tested formula that didn't change for decades. However, in 2017, Nintendo released Breath of the Wild, that reinvigorated the series with a much more free open-world style instead. Halo Infinite's campaign reminds me of such a transformation. The game starts off, just as previous Halos did, with two quite linear closed-off missions that pretty much teach you the basics of the game. However, after that, it completely changes direction. Now, missions aren't stitched together maps one after another, but pretty much all take place on the same map, with an emphasis on exploration and optional secondary objectives. Rather than, like in the past, the game telling you what to do, now you tell the game what to do. If you want, you can just do all the main missions back to back, or, as I did, you can take your time, explore, and absorb almost everything the game has to offer. What you do is up to you, and how much or how little you accomplish is too in tandem. Now obviously, in order to get people to explore an open world, you need two things: a reason and a reward. The way Halo Infinite's secondary optional objectives work, I think, is genius. By completing secondary objectives, like defending Spartan squads from being under attack, taking over enemy bases, destroying propaganda towers, or eliminating a hostile enemy Hitman style, you gain valor. Now, valor is not a currency per se, but a score, of which the more of it you have, the more stuff you unlock, such as better weapons and vehicles that you can redeem at your bases. Now, of course, the better weapons and vehicles you have, the easier you will be able to progress in the main missions. That and the fact that many such secondary objectives unlock fast travel routes which you will absolutely want and are often nearby to the main objectives anyway. It's a fantastic system, as no matter whether you're a total completionist who just has to do everything, or someone who just wants to breeze through the main game like I do a 12-pack of Mountain Dew, you will no doubt enjoy what's on offer here, regardless of playstyle. Now, I'll talk more about the world later, but considering this is a first-person shooter, maybe we should talk about, the shooting. With games, it's extremely important that with the controls you input, you feel as if the game respects such via its output. And this is especially true with first-person shooters, whereby precision, accuracy and fast reactions are of paramount importance. When I played Halo Infinite for the first time, within seconds I uttered, out loud no less, "Damn, this feels good." And it really does. The game feels responsive, making me feel like I'm properly in control, and most importantly, responsible for both my victories and defeats. The weapons all feel very well designed. Yes, of course, some are better than others, long live the BR, but what I mean is, every weapon has its time and place depending on the situation. A lot of times in FPS games, there's a strict hierarchy on what weapons are better and worse. SMGs are almost always considered to be better than a shotgun, for example, but here, that might not always be true. Some weapons are absolute arse from a distance, but great up close. Some weapons are precise, whereas others do AoE. Some weapons do a ton of damage, but have very limited ammo, making you want to perhaps conserve it for a more potentially deadlier enemy. Point is, you're never just stuck with the same weapon all game. You'll be changing weapons constantly throughout to fit what you need at the time, and that to me not only keeps the gameplay feeling fresh, but makes me feel like a sort of jack of all trades at the same time. It's awesome. Well, except the grenade and power selection, that's crap. But it's not just about what you have, it's also about what your enemies have. Unlike most other FPS games whereby you just point, shoot, and done, here, just like all the other Halo games, the enemies you face all feel very distinct, and each one has a very different way to be dealt with, so you're gonna have to be tactical and think fast when dealing with them. Grunts are a total joke and can be dealt with extreme ease, whereas elites will require much more patience. Jackals are annoying bastards, and brutes will destroy you in seconds. This symbiosis of weapon juggling and enemy tactics makes for highly engaging gameplay that never really feels repetitive, stale or boring, which, again, without sounding like a broken record, is extremely common in most other FPS games. And like all Halo games, Infinite of course has its 4 iconic difficulties, that being easy, normal, heroic and legendary, and yes, of course, I played on legendary. And honestly, why wouldn't you? Unless you're an absolute novice at FPS games or just playing for the story, you're gonna get way more bang for your buck by having a more challenging experience. I saw some people say they completed the game in 7 hours, and I was just like, what? I spent 7 hours just doing bonus stuff, never mind the main missions. And that's all down to the huge difficulty spike that only Legendary can really provide. The game is challenging enough to feel rewarding, but not too difficult as to make you want to throw your controller out the window. It's just right, basically. And hey, as the game has an extremely generous checkpoint system, saving borderline every 30 seconds, even if you do die, you won't lose much progress anyway, allowing you to really perform trial and error until succeeding. Though I have to say, my god, the boss fights can be absolutely brutal. There were some bosses that I ended up spending around an hour on just trying to get them down, and they will definitely separate the wheat from the chaff, let's just put it that way. But my word, that feeling when you finally get them down, whew, it's well and truly wonderful. I mean look, and I've said this before, typically there are 2 types of gamers. Those who are story focused and those who are gameplay focused. And of these 2 types of people, I am definitely the former. I have no problem playing a game with repetitive or boring gameplay so long as the story can pull me along. However, typically if a game has a lame story and I'm relying only on gameplay to keep me hooked, in all likelihood, I'd just stop playing. But Halo Infinite was different. In regards to the story, I had no idea what the hell was going on, and that's because it continues on from where it left off from the last games that I hadn't played, and thus, to me, the entire plot just seemed like it was about Master Chief in some sort of love triangle with two hologram ladies. I had no idea what the hell was going on, and yet despite that, the gameplay was so damn good that it kept me playing. And that, for someone like me, is quite an achievement. Now, I mentioned Elder Scrolls earlier, and weirdly enough, playing Halo Infinite for the first time gave me almost the same feeling as playing those games did. I mean, obviously, it's not an RPG. I mean, this is Halo, for Christ's sake. It's an FPS through and through. What I mean, however, is that pretty much everywhere you see, you can go. Remember how I mentioned Breath of the Wild? In that game, one of the reasons the world felt so free wasn't just that it was open world, but that it provided you with the right tools to easily traverse it. In the game, you could glide around the map using this parachute thing, as well as climb up pretty much anywhere. And again, Halo Infinite does something similar. Here, you have a grap link that allows you to travel up and down with relative ease, allowing you to explore as if the world's your oyster. I mean, honestly, at times I thought the game ought to be rebranded as Mountain Climber Simulator, as that's what I found myself doing a lot of the time. I love it. Far, far more than I thought I would. To be honest, whenever FPS games try to spice things up with such movement utility features such as this, I often dismiss it as naught more than a gimmick. However, with this, I find it hard to imagine the game without it now. Oh, and of course, in order to upgrade it, as well as the other abilities, you need to find collectibles littered across the map. Again, inspiring you to take matters into your own hands, and not just doing what the game tells you to. It's incredible and feels very rewarding indeed. Back when Halo Infinite had its first gameplay reveal, many people said that the game looked, to put it bluntly, pretty crap, and admittedly, it did. However, development builds are development builds, and I can tell you that on release, the game looks stunning. Now, is it Unreal Engine 5 photorealistic levels of stunning? No. But is it worthy of being called a next-gen title? Absolutely. There were many times when I was playing the game whereby I just had to stop and admire the vista that lay before me. Whether it's the high view and draw distance, shadows, lighting, skies, it's all so damn good. At least to me. Then again, this is also the guy who thinks Morrowind looks beautiful, so take that with a pinch of salt. With that said, however, I do have one giant complaint with the world, and that's that it never changes. Halo has always been known for its diverse environments, whether it's snow, desert, jungle or ships. Halo has always spiced up its landscapes to keep the game feeling fresh. The same cannot sadly be said for Halo Infinite. Every single interior and exterior in this game looks almost exactly the same. Whenever you're inside, it's just blue shiny metal, and more blue shiny metal. And whenever you're outside, it's just green trees, blue sky, and, you guessed it, green trees, blue sky. Throughout the game, you're just kinda waiting for the environment to change, but it never does. With Halo Infinite, what you see really is what you get. And I mean, don't get me wrong, what we got is indeed stunning, but how hard would it have been to mix it up a bit? Where's the snow zone? Where's the desert zone? Where's the jungle zone? Why do all interiors look exactly the same? And originally, I just couldn't figure out why. I mean, this game was in development, supposedly, for 6 years, from 2015 to 2021, longer than any other Halo game by a long shot. And yet despite that, it's by far the least visually unique. However, if you do a bit of research into this game's development, you'll quickly find out why that is. Halo Infinite underwent a case of development hell, a term used to describe an extremely unstable, messy, and disorganized development process. Halo Infinite had multiple game directors come and go throughout the years, and the game was restarted on multiple occasions. Not only that, but in order to try to get it out the door quicker, it has recently come out that over 2/3 of the game was cut to meet deadlines. That's 66% by the way. 66%. That's a lot of percent. And funnily enough, it seems my comparisons to Breath of the Wild weren't unfounded, as it seems that to create such a vast world was exactly what the team were aiming to do. Difference is, however, whereas Breath of the Wild has desert zones, autumn zones, and snowy zones, Halo Infinite does not. And that can be directly attributed to the terrible planning and organisational abilities at 343. And man, is that a painful realisation, as what we have here, even with 66% of it cut, is a really damn good game. But can you imagine just how good this game would have been had 343 been able to actually deliver on their original lofty ambitions? I mean, what we got was great, but this could have, potentially, had one of, if not the, greatest single-player FPS campaign of all time. I can almost guarantee they will sell more campaign stuff via future DLC in the coming years, which, more than likely, will feature some much more different biomes. But man, that's lame. Overall, however, I had a blast with the campaign. If you're looking for an admittedly repetitive but very smooth feeling high quality open world single player FPS experience, then look no further. I can almost promise you that you won't be disappointed. Well, unless you're looking for those animals that were featured in the trailer, because they were nowhere to be seen, but whatever. What you will be disappointed in, however, is the multiplayer. Halo Infinite's multiplayer has to be one of the most dystopian multiplayers I have ever seen in a AAA game, ever. And I've played World of Warcraft. Halo multiplayers were great because of a 3-step process. Step 1, great gameplay, which would eventually lead to Step 2, worthy rewards, which you could then brag about via Step 3, social interaction. Now, Step 1 is there. As I said earlier, Halo Infinite's gameplay feels top-notch, and that very same logic from the campaign translates over into the multiplayer. But as for worthy rewards and social interaction, oh my, oh my. Rewards are beyond important in games because though gameplay can of course be fun in the moment, without the necessary carrot on a stick, the gameplay alone will not satisfy people to stick around in the long run. Rewards ensure players have a reason to keep coming back and playing more. And let's face it, we humans love rewards. We love the feeling of being different and better than other people, to brag, to show off. There's a reason why people buy expensive Gucci bags or top-of-the-line smartphones year on year, and that reason is the exact same reason why people grind to get better armor or weapons in games, so that other people look at you and go, damn, they're way better than me. Or in the case of most video games, damn, they need to take a shower. I remember having the Hayabusa armor in Halo 3, which was achieved by collecting all of the skulls in the campaign. I also remember saving up enough credits to get the badass looking Emil's helmet in Halo Reach after months of saving. A good reward can really mean a lot to players, especially if the way they earn it is challenging. But what happens when a game removes challenge from rewards and instead replaces said challenge with money? Halo Infinite. That's what. The way that Halo Infinite's reward system works is genuinely like some crappy mobile game that you'd see on the backside of the App Store. Throughout the campaign, there were these hidden armor caches, and upon finding them, the game informed you that you'd unlocked a piece of armor in the multiplayer. Cool, I thought to myself. So what did I unlock? Some badass armor sets perhaps? Nope. How about a lame ass armor coating instead? Woo. But hey, remember when I said I completed the campaign on Legendary? Well, there's always good rewards for doing that. After all, who remembers how after doing so in Halo 3, you'd unlock the EOD armor set? Ah, good times. Well, look here. In Halo Infinite, there's this golden visor called Legend that's a legendary item. Well, shucks, this must be my reward. Wait, what? Available in the store? In case you haven't got the memo yet, there's virtually no real way to customize your Spartan unless you use real money. Almost every cosmetic item of value is locked behind the battle pass, which of course you buy using real money. Oh, I'm sorry, you thought this game was about Master Chief? No, it's about Master Card. Did I mention they're charging you money to change the colour of your armour now, by the way? Charging you money to change colour. I think I'll make my Spartan pink. Sorry sir, that'll be $10 please. Oh, never mind. What about green then? That's another $10. Okay, blue? $10 please sir. Jesus Christ. Okay fine, I'll just stick with grey. Have a nice day sir. A decade ago in Halo Reach, credits were earned by playing the game. Today, they're earned by swiping your credit card. Naturally, Halo fans were furious at such a change, with thread after thread of well-deserved criticism and feedback. And of course, to counterbalance the criticism, there were the usual corporate shills. One of the top posts from r/Xbox Series X. Maybe it's just me, but I'm so happy I'm playing Halo Infinite for the campaign so I can skip the whole multiplayer toxicity going on. Honestly, a lot of the Halo subreddit made all Halo fans look bad. I'm assuming it's mostly the new players who didn't really play Halo before and are the sweaty competitive players that normally play Warzone or Apex. I just want to have nothing to do with that. You are? I don't complain about microtransactions in games and instead just consume whatever slop my corporate overlords give me. And that makes me a mature person. Right, guys? Ugh. Consumers. However, and I can't tell if this is just me getting older and more cynical, but seriously, what are you people wasting your time for? The amount of people I've seen getting pissy with free for free directly over these horrendous monetization policies is unbelievable. Because folks, and I hate to sound like a broken record here, as though this is meant to be a gaming channel, it seems all I do these days is analyse corporate hierarchies every 5 minutes. But if you seriously think that free for free industries has anything to do behind the decision making of these microtransactions, you are beyond naive. Free for free industries isn't just owned by Microsoft, it was created directly by Microsoft. To put it bluntly, free for free is Microsoft's bitch. Free for free merely makes the games Microsoft allows them to, but when it comes to stacking the moolah, Microsoft is the one who takes charge. I see so many people angry and upset with the monetization this game has, and rightly so. But honestly, how is it not common knowledge at this point that corporate subsidiaries have borderline zero power over financial affairs? Do you people have Google, DuckDuckGo, Bing, if we're desperate? Stop looking at games as individual products that live in a vacuum and start looking at them as part of a complex corporate portfolio, as when you do this, why things are the way they are will all start to make sense. If you want to know why Halo Infinite is monetized the way it is, I can tell you exactly why in just 2 words. Game Pass. After the laughable PR disaster that was the Xbox One announcement back in 2013, the Xbox brand has been damaged significantly. Well, that and the fact that Microsoft's lineup of exclusives throughout that generation paled in comparison to the competition, but I digress. Xbox has been the underdog platform for many years now, and in order to get back in the game, no pun intended, Microsoft knew they had to pull some real miracles. One of those miracles was Game Pass. I've said it once and I'll say it again. Game Pass is without any shadow of a doubt the greatest bargain in gaming, bar none. For a mere $10 a month, you get access to hundreds of high-quality games on not just your Xbox, but Windows PCs too, including, no less, Halo Infinite. There's no question about it, for the customer, this is a fantastic deal, but for Microsoft, not so much. But Microsoft isn't just being generous with Game Pass, no, they know exactly what they're doing. You see, once again, there are 2 types of gamers, single-player gamers and multiplayer gamers. Single-player gamers tend to be some of the cheapest, fiscally conservative bastards you'll ever meet. There could be a game that's absolutely fantastic and on sale for 90% off, and the single-player gamer will still say, "Nah, I'll wait until it's 95% off and then I'll buy it," if they're lucky. Meanwhile, multiplayer gamers are the exact opposite, being given the nickname of walking wallets. Multiplayer gamers will buy literally anything, no matter how stupid and worthless it is. Oh look, I can buy a flower to put in my Spartan's helmet. Must consume. Now, for single-player gamers, Game Pass is an absolute godsend, as it's a total bargain and satisfies their needs well, bringing them into the Microsoft umbrella. I mean, take a look at me. I paid for a month of Game Pass and got the entire Halo Infinite campaign for 1/5 of the price of if I would have bought it directly. I'm impressed. However, Microsoft has to make back that money somehow, and the way they do that is via the walking wallets, aka the multiplayer gamers. Using microtransactions, the multiplayer gamers are essentially expected to subsidize the single-player gamer's experience, in essence, making up for lost profits. This, by the way, is also the reason why Halo Infinite's multiplayer is free to play, as to get in as many saps as possible. You know, I've seen some morons say, Halo Infinite should be a loss leader product. What? No! Game Pass is the loss leader, Halo Infinite is the cash cow. You see, Microsoft's corporate strategy for gaming is extremely unique. They don't care that much about the actual Xbox itself. Microsoft's goal over the next 10 years is to expand the Xbox brand outside of just Xbox hardware via Game Pass and the cloud. They care not about hardware sales, but software sales, specifically getting everyone in on their subscription services. This is why, by the way, they brought all the Halo games to PC and have been doing the whole "let's stop the console wars" PR bollocks as of late. They want to spread their influence onto other platforms. Make no mistake, you will see Game Pass and their cloud gaming service, xCloud, on other platforms in the coming years. When you realise this, and what Microsoft is ultimately aiming for, the reason why Halo Infinite's multiplayer is the way it is should become crystal clear. Microsoft is not aiming for qualitative profits, meaning small numbers of people making big purchases as is the traditional model, but qualitative purchases. Millions of people on many different platforms paying a subscription fee. But, in order to get to that point, they need someone to fit the bill for such investments. And that someone is you. So you can cry all you want about the microtransactions, folks, but unless there's some major PR pushback, it ain't gonna change. Remember, if it's free, you're the product. But it's not just the fact that the multiplayer is a blatant cash grab. I said earlier that one of the great things about Halo multiplayer in the past was how much they focused on social features. The Halo games were made, from the ground up, to foster player interaction and be inherently communal. Sometimes for the better, and sometimes for the worse.
How can you call yourself Halo King when you're not even trying to win?
Unfortunately, the same logic cannot apply to Halo Infinite, that seems to have almost purposely gone out of its way to be as antisocial as possible. And to demonstrate this, I'd like to show you a list of features that do not exist in Halo Infinite. Pre-game lobbies whereby you can talk and get to know your team and enemies before battle? Gone. Having the ability to see what other players' Spartans look like in said lobby? Gone. Being able to inspect other players' service records and see their stats? Gone. Being able to vote and veto maps before playing them? Gone. Many more things that if I listed them we'd be here all day? Gone. You know, I'm so tired of multiplayer games these days. I remember back in the late 2000s being on Xbox Live with my buddies, talking crap down our terrible bundled plastic headset to one another, and having a whale of a time doing it. Could Xbox Live be a toxic place that was extremely unwelcoming and overly competitive? There's no question about it. Would I rather have that than an overly sanitized antisocial silent hellscape whereby there are zero social features of any kind? You bet I would. Multiplayer FPS games are more than just the gameplay, the guns, the game modes, etc. It's also, in large part, about the community. Who you play with, who you play against. Back in the day on Xbox Live, it was very easy to make friends with pretty much anyone you played with, because the games were designed around such interactions. And as such, we remember the games very fondly. But when a game prevents players, or at the very least, makes it very difficult to communicate or have any sort of social input with other players, what you're left with isn't really a multiplayer, but a campaign with human enemies. One of the most creative of any social feature I've ever seen in a game was Forge Mode, whereby you could make your own maps using predefined assets. I used to spend hours on Forge making obstacles for my friends. It really was something else, and a feature that Bungie definitely could have got away with not adding, but did so anyway. Well, unfortunately for us, Forge isn't in the game at launch. Oh no, that's coming soon. Same with another iconic feature of the franchise, that being campaign co-op. And I don't know about you, but I'm so tired of games coming out piecemeal, especially without features that are borderline mandatory to the Halo experience. When I bought Halo Reach 10 years ago, I got a full feast. With this, I'm getting half my meal. How is it that Bungie made Reach in half the time it took for 343 to make Infinite, yet Infinite is the unfinished game? Oh yeah, they're inept. I'm told Halo 5 had a similar situation, and needless to say, suffered as a result. You see, a game's launch is by far the most important time for said game, and the state that a game launches in is typically how it will be remembered, for better or worse. If a game launches feature complete and bug free, the hype of the release and such high quality will ping pong from one another, and solidify the game's reputation well. But if a game launches underdeveloped or buggy, it doesn't matter if it will be fixed later. The release is what people will ultimately remember, and we have many examples of this logic. No Man's Sky launched as an absolute disaster, but many years later fixed itself and is now, so I'm told, a very good experience. But whenever people think of No Man's Sky, they're always going to think of, oh, that's the game that was really crap when it came out. Same with Fallout 76, that game could convert to Christianity and it would still struggle to find forgiveness. And Cyberpunk 2077, no matter what, will always be defined by its joke of a launch. I'm not sure why game developers think that players are just going to sit around while they fix their games. They're not. And unfortunately, Halo Infinite is already starting to see the effects of its underwhelming featureless greedy launch, at least on Steam, where we have access to the numbers. As of the time of recording, according to Steam player count, Halo Infinite had just 29,000 players playing the game, which, by the way, includes the campaign. In the last month, the game has lost around 50% of its players from its peak at launch, with more people leaving than joining on average every day. Meanwhile, at the very same time, Team Fortress 2, another free-to-play first-person shooter from 2007, had 3 times the players, with 62,000 players playing. And GTA 5, a pay-to-play game from 2013, had 89,000 players. But to really put into perspective just how little Halo Infinite is denting the PC market, at the same time Halo Infinite had 29,000 players, Counter-Strike Global Offensive had over 500,000 players. Yeah, and I don't think I need to insult your intelligence by saying that a game that has just come out should not be struggling against such ancient relics. But it is, and the reason for that, in my opinion, is that all of the great things that people remember Halo for, such as its social features, aren't here. This feels like a cheap cash grab, which, as we've already established, it is. It's fine and dandy to have an amazing campaign, which, even despite all the cutbacks, it most definitely is. But at the end of the day, it's the multiplayer that keeps people sticking around. And to be frank, only the biggest fools in the world would even take one glance at this multiplayer and actually take it seriously. Most people have the self-respect not to be manipulated by brands and reject playing such a joke. Why Halo Infinite is the way it is due to a mix of developer incompetence and corporate stratagem, both of which are becoming extremely common expectancies in the world of AAA gaming. I hate to say it, but the reality of the situation is that, no, Halo isn't back, and Halo will never be back. The kind of environment required for Halo games to be made and prosper simply no longer exists under the Microsoft umbrella. If there is to ever be an FPS game akin to Halo again, it will come out of nowhere via the indie scene. If I was judging this game purely on its campaign, it would get high praise, and in tandem, if I was judging this game purely on its multiplayer, it would get no praise. However, Halo games are both, a symbiotic mix of the two that do not exist in a vacuum. Therefore, I have to sadly rate it as such.